Hyperreality is a state of confusion in which a person cannot identify the difference between reality and its simulation. French theorist Jean Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality was first introduced in his 1981 publication Simulacra and Simulations, which was intended to describe the postmodern condition of society at the time. His concept was influenced by phenomena, semiotics, and the work of Canadian philosopher Marshall McLuhan, famous for his statement, "The medium is the message."
Advertising is the major art form of the 20th century. It is really a very high art form which has got misclassified as merely commercial.
Although influenced by his work, Baudrillard challenged McLuhan's theory that the communication medium should be the focus of study and not the message itself. He proposed there is a difference between reality and the reality the media represents. In his controversial publication, The Gulf War Did Not Take Place, Baudrillard argued that the Gulf War was presented to the world through representations by the media and was an atrocity passed off as a war. In Simulacrum and Simulations, he makes a similar statement that Disneyland is imaginary and is an example of hyperreality. Disneyland was created to look perfectly realistic, taking the imaginations of its visitors into a false reality that feels more real than the natural world around us. Baudrillard described Disneyland as a deterrence machine set up to rejuvenate in reverse the fiction of the real. It is meant to be an infantile world in order to make us believe that the adults are elsewhere in the real world and to conceal the fact that real childishness is everywhere, especially among adults who go there to act the child in order to foster illusions of their real childishness. Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality is similar to his idea of simulacrum, which he describes as something that replaces reality with representations of reality. In his 1983 book Simulations, he presents the 4 steps of hyperreal recreation. Step 1 is the basic and accurate reflection of our reality. Step 2 is the distortion in how our reality is represented. Step 3 is the imitation of our reality. Step 4 is a simulation where reality and its representation have no relationship. The final 3 steps are what Baudrillard defined as simulacrum, forming the illusion of hyperreality. Baudrillard believed the Western world had reached step 4, where our reality has become a simulation and information replaces the machine as the primary mode of production. We are so overwhelmed with information from the internet, social media and news outlets that this has formed the culture of our reality. New cultural products are no longer based on reality, but are based on other cultural products we experience. Culture is no longer based on reality, but is based on a simulation of a simulation. The artistic movement of hyperreality uses digital tools such as Cinema 4D, Blender, and Houdini to create images and animations that represent a manipulated reality, creating a hyperreal illusion. For example, Sergei Sharapov's visual study of reflections and refractions in water and oil emulsion at macro level is a simulation and representation. But by manipulating the movement, colour, lighting and composition, the artwork becomes a representation that has no relationship with reality but feels real, creating the illusion of hyperreality. Caroline Vang is a digital artist who explores nature and its alien aspects to create obscure digital sculptures. Her work for Bloom Festival consists of a sculpture that is a representation of a plant. Specific elements have been manipulated to create the hyperreal illusion. The organic shape of the sculpture is an imitation of a natural plant formed from glass-like material. The green environment in the background shows signs of the natural world in reality. So, by manipulating these aspects, the work shows a distortion of reality through imitation. Vang is trying to show nature from a different perspective, a perspective that emphasizes beauty and form to engage the audience. Phil Bonham creates hyperrealist work that depicts future realities and concepts. Through his work, he has explored the idea that scanning human minds becomes a reality, creating an artistic impression of this. His work, Future Landscapes of the Metaverse, is a visual interpretation of what the landscapes of the metaverse could look like. This is similar to hyperreality. Natural landscapes have been indirectly referenced, but the work has been manipulated to represent the future rather than the reality we live in today. The global collective of artists called Hyperfuturism is the driving force behind the early movement of Hyperfuturism. They are a collective united in pursuing new frontiers in creative consciousness and storytelling for next metaphysical era, toying with the boundaries of reality, identity, space and time. Their work explores alternative and future scenarios, exploding the myth of inevitability and offering new windows onto the world in hand. The movement is committed to creative self-determination, artist ownership and open source creativity in the search for new languages, communities and artistic freedoms. Hyperrealism can depict our world in new ways by enhancing reality and creating illusions. It is a form of hyper-expression showcasing reality from unseen perspectives to communicate and engage audiences. Similar to this, hyperfuturism can imagine future concepts and visual languages that can shape our future.